Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pot of Gold podcast. Today, we actually have something we haven't done before. I'm bringing back a guest that I've interviewed before for round two. This is Jesse Stanton. And for those of you who haven't been introduced to him before, when I did my first interview, I was still getting to know him. And since then, I've joined his mentorship program. He's become my coach, even something of a friend. And he's helped me a lot with my mindset and the development that I've had. And so I just wanted to go ahead and talk to him a little bit more, see if we can dive a little deeper into his journey as an entrepreneur so that we can kind of get an understanding of what's required from a person that's exiting their 9 to 5 to become an entrepreneur full time and live life on their own terms. Jesse, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Nathanael, it's my pleasure, dude. As soon as you asked me to be, dude, I was tickled pink, of course, man. Thank you so much. This is awesome. I love what you've been doing. I love to see your own growth and development, but it's been awesome to see the way that you've been growing this podcast and some of the guests that you've had on, man. So I'm really tickled pink to be back here. Thank you so much. It's truly an honor and a privilege.
I appreciate that. It's been a phenomenal journey. It's definitely not something I expected myself to do even 5 years ago. So life is an interesting thing.
It is an interesting thing. Yeah. What made you want to jump in and do this? You said this was something you didn't even see yourself doing 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, I had a lot of fear in my life, right? Because after my assault when I was 18, I had a hard time trusting people. And so my main focus for a long time was to just hide, maintain my anonymity and to not go out and grow or do anything because it felt safer. Sure. But I don't know. There's dangers to that as well. There's pros and cons to everything because that also led to a life that didn't feel very fulfilled. And when I joined the mentorship with Pace Morby about the Gator method, he talked about how he was creating clones of himself on YouTube and how they were doing all this work while he was off doing his own thing. And I realized that podcasting is a growth vehicle. It would allow me to develop all these soft skills, even technical skills, and it would help me get around my fear of talking to people. And so I entered that not so much with this idea of, I'm going to go make a podcast so I can make money, but so that I could develop skills and become more of the person that I aspired to be.
Wow. How do you feel like that have you feel like you've grown closer to that over the last 12 months?
Oh, yeah. It's been a huge leap. I can look back at the gap, I guess you could say, the gain that I've had, and it's night and day, really. The fact that I'm getting off in front of a camera and going to events, I'm meeting people in person. I'm even teaching a class now. It seems kind of wild to look at in retrospect.
Interesting. It's been really neat to see from the outside looking in. So it's always neat to hear what it's like from your perspective. And I think that's the hardest part. Like when you're sitting in the driver's seat, trying to, a lot of times, especially as an entrepreneur, the milestones or the goals that a lot of us set, especially early on, are around some sort of monetary value or something like that.
Yeah.
And the hardest part as an entrepreneur, especially if you spent the majority of your life trading your time for money, where it's like, hey, I just go do this thing and I'm going to get paid for it. Go give up X amount of hours here. I'm going to receive X amount of dollars back. And entrepreneurship isn't like that. And you really have to grow the value that you bring to the market. And there's got to be a really specific skill set around the problem that you solve if you want to be paid what you think you're worth. And a lot of times, you don't recognize that. It's not like we have people that are just floating around us to be able to just tell us those types of things. Yeah, and so when you don't see immediate results, I think that's one of the biggest things that makes entrepreneurship really hard. Yeah. So it's always interesting to hear things from your perspective as well, like to see your growth and how this has helped tailor your skill sets over the last year of doing these things.
That's kind of an interesting thing to think about myself too, is thinking of how my own growth from an outside perspective. I don't think that you really think about the value of your time as a W-2 employee apart from the hourly wage, right? But as I've walked this journey, this path, I've started to value my time in different ways. And I've realized that, like, if I were to put an hourly wage to my time, different sections of my day are worth more to me. And that was an interesting realization along the way. And so, like, I'm willing to go out and do my 8 hours a day for my 9 to 5 and get paid my hourly rate. But if they want me to work overtime, well, I don't know if the overtime pay that they're offering actually equates to the value I place on that time for myself anymore. And that was an interesting realization as well.
Is that from a perspective of what you would be doing with that time as an entrepreneur? Or what you would be doing in that role working overtime?
I think it's more of the fact that I realized that not all of my time has to have a monetary recompense towards it, because there's time that I spend with my son or my wife that is extremely valuable to me that I almost don't feel I can put a price to because it needs to happen. Those relationships are so core to my identity even that I want to make sure that they're maintained healthy and that I have the actual time to contribute to them.
I am just absolutely in love with what you just said, because I think so often we get caught up in that trap of what is the monetary value of my time? And one of the words that you just used in there that I really loved was like my identity. Who is my identity? Who is the identity of the individual that I'm trying to become? And what do they do with their time? And what is the value of that time? And the value doesn't necessarily always need to equate to a dollar per se. You know, I remember Donald Trump telling a story about a friend that he had early on. And this friend of his was in a really bad situation financially. But he always flew first class. I know we're kind of teetering in like kind of a dollar value here, but he always flew first class. Even though he couldn't afford it, he always flew first class. And Donald Trump would even tell him, like, hey, like, stop. If you can't afford it, like, don't do it. But he would always fly first class. He always did it. And then he eventually went on to become successful and all that kind of stuff. But the way that Donald Trump was able to see that from the outside looking into this guy's life was how important the identity was for that person and where he spent his time. And whether it's you want to internalize the value of somebody, you know, of yourself by being somebody who can afford and consistently flies first class, because that's important for you to be able to, you know, you hear people do it with cars too. I heard Dan Martell, you know, talk about it, you know, with cars and stuff too. Like you go and the first time you purchase like that first like supercar, like it unlocks your mindset. Like you see yourself differently, you execute differently. Same with this person flying first class. But I think the same could be true whether you're flying first class, whether you're buying a private jet, whether you're buying a supercar, or whether you're spending time with your family. And I think that's really, really important. I love that you said that.
Well, I think you've brought this up before, is this paradigm of people think that you have to do and be before you can have. I'm not sure what the specific order is on this, but I know that it's supposed to be, do, have, right?
Yep.
Where you have to identify what you want to be and act that person out first before you start to have the things that kind of person has. And that's kind of an interesting way to approach things, because what am I doing as a podcast host? Well, I decided I'm going to be a podcast host. I started running a podcast where I start interviewing people, and now that's what I am. And so that now I have a successful podcast because I just do the thing that a podcast host does. He interviews people about their lives, about their experiences. And maybe I'm not the flashiest or the best person for the job right now, but I'm
Dude,
developing
have you seen
my
yourself?
skills.
The hat, the vest, dude, you're up there, bro.
And I've seen the progress along the way. And it's been really kind of an interesting phenomena for myself, because for a long time, I didn't have any self-confidence. That inner voice beat me up a lot. And that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about as an entrepreneur. First, how did you come to the realization that the time value of the value of your time and how much it was worth wasn't like an hourly rate? Because I'm sure that wasn't always the case for you. And then second, how did you get to a point where you understood that these things were going to come into your life as obstacles and that you still needed to push forward despite the fact that they were kind of showing you that you weren't going to be successful overnight?
Wow. What a loaded question. How did I decide what the first question was, the dollar value?
Yeah. How did you separate it out from like an hourly wage?
I've always been kind of a dreamer, I guess. I remember I'm writing a book right now, and I have some of these stories even laid out in my book. But I remember early on, dude, when I was getting my driver's permit, I'm 14 years old, 15 years old, and my dad and I would just go drive. We'd just talk, and we'd have these amazing life lesson kind of talks. And other times we just put the tunes on, man. But every single drive that we had, somewhere along the way, Lose Yourself by Eminem would come on, and we just listened to it. And I've gotten really, really fond of Eminem. I love his story, and I think a lot of people do. I think it really kind of resonates. But the very beginning of Lose Yourself, it says, if you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted, one moment, would you capture it or just let it slip? So from a very young age, that has always kind of been in my subconscious. It's always been somewhat of a mantra for me. I've always been a dreamer. I've always always been into music and stuff, man. I've been in countless bands. I've recorded demo music, been played on all sorts of local radio stations, internet and satellite radio stations. Like I've done some pretty impressive things, I think, for an average Joe. And even then, dude, like even we're playing bars around Anchorage, Alaska and stuff. And these bars are packed and people come to see us. They love us and all this kind of stuff. But, I remember getting off one of the bars was called Chill Coot Charlie's. It's here in Anchorage. And I remember, one of the first times we played Chill Coots, and I remember posting on Facebook, first show at Coots done, next stop Madison Square Garden. I always had what's the word for it? I guess you could call it a humble ego. Like I knew that I wasn't like a humble brag. Yeah. I knew that I wasn't better than anybody, but the way that I would talk about my dreams and the things I wanted to accomplish was above what you'd hear most people talk about themselves or what they want to do. I'd even go to work. Dude, this is in the military, man. I go to work and I would post these flyers up above the urinals. I would go post them. I remember when we recorded our first demo, I came in with a stack of like these demo CDs that say Arc of Silence, which is our band name. And I was handing them out to everybody, dude. I'd put them on my boss's desks. Like nobody was not getting a free signed copy from me. And I was always like that, man. And there was a couple pieces to it. One, we go back to identity, right? Like that's how I saw myself. I grew up with posters of people, guys like Kiss and Van Halen and Def Leppard and AC/DC on my walls, dude. I was like, man, how soon can I just be them? So even the antics and stuff I'd do on stage, dude, like I'd get my guitar behind my head and I'm like doing solos and I'm in the crowd and if I could sing, I would be a really, really good lead singer. I have just the energy and the enthusiasm for it. But anyway, all of this to say, Nathanael, I ended up getting deployed, and that kind of kicked, it kind of threw a wrench in that whole thing. And but that's always just kind of innately been who I am. And so when I started jumping into entrepreneurship, I treat every opportunity as if it was my one shot to seize everything I ever wanted. And in one moment, would I capture it or just let it slip? And I treated every show that I did like that. I treated every song that I wrote like that. I treat everything that I do like that. I'm treating your podcast like that. Your podcast, somebody might come across this like, oh wait, who's this guy? Of course they will. But I treat every little thing that I do, man, is from that perspective. And so when it comes to setting like a dollar amount, I picked a number that I just thought was crazy. I first started out like, okay, $1,000 an hour. What? $1,000? You freaking kidding me? $1,000 an hour? Like I just picked a random ass number, dude, that I thought was like in line with the identity that I wanted to have. So whether it was somebody as a rock star or whether it was somebody as an entrepreneur that I was looking up to, and I think it was less about the dollar amount. You've probably heard this from other entrepreneurs, like people who are like billionaires. Like I remember Mark Cuban getting asked in a podcast, like, when is enough enough? And I don't remember what the number is, but I think Mark Cuban said something. Don't quote me on this because I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think he said something like, once you pass like 50 million, or I was actually surprisingly low, like 25 million, 30 million. Like from there, like it's like you can do anything you want, whether you got 50 million in the bank or you got $1 billion. Like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like your life is not going to be any better necessarily. Like you can pretty much go do anything you want. But the reason I bring that up is because for me, it's already
kind of a qualitative shift, so to speak.
Yeah. But the reason I bring that up was because for me at the time when I was placing it, like $1,000 an hour could be the same as $10,000. Like that, like it's like, it doesn't matter at that point. Like that's just the caliber of the identity that I want to take on. So I just picked something that I would thought was like, holy cow, what would this person do? And that's a really great question because it really helped shape what I do now. And if it's a $5 an hour task, I literally, I won't do it. I will not do it. And we're myself, Kevin, and Amber starting a brand new business, dude. I'm right there. I will not do it. So it's just become a default thinking. I will go find somebody.
So one of the things that kind of comes to my mind here is some of the lessons I learned about money that may have been inaccurate. One of the things that I was told when I was kind of going out to leave and to go into the world was that I should always look at things as no job is beneath me. And so if I were to view it that way, then I would say, okay, I will do a $5 an hour job because it's not beneath me. But there's kind of a trap there, because if you're stuck doing all the $5 and $10 an hour tasks, you'll never be able to focus on solving the bigger problems. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a great way. I think the person who probably gave that advice did it with a particular lesson in mind. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it was more about don't be so egotistical that you refuse to do work that's respectable.
Right. I would agree. Would you also agree that that result is different than probably the kind of result you'd want to see as an entrepreneur of 5 years or 10 years?
Yes, definitely.
I think so too. I think there is so much value in what you just said. Because I grew up the same way, especially in the military, dude. Like whether you are brand new airman or you've been in for 15 or 20 years, like you're never too proud to go pick up a mop.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, it's not that I'm definitely not too proud to, metaphorically speaking, pick up a mop. But with my mindset now is, what is the result that we're trying to get by mopping up this mess? If nobody's around, of course I can do it. But my default thinking now is like, how creative can I get with this? How could I find somebody else to come along for the ride who also has experience in X, Y, and Z? So it's not to say that I won't do it, or that I'm too proud to do it, or anything like that, but it's just become my default thinking.
And so your method of solving the problem isn't a direct, I do this task. It's more along the lines of, I'm going to leverage my skills and delegation and allowing to enable other people to have employment that you're leveraging.
I own the result, not the process. Yeah.
Okay. I really like the way we've laid that out. Makes it really good to differentiate. It's okay to take on those tasks, especially at the start of your journey. But as you progress on, you should be learning how to trade those tasks for higher leverage tasks, and then passing them down to people that you're also going to empower to progress along the way.
That's well said. The way I had this epiphany one day, I don't know how familiar you are with the military, but when you join the military,
movies and reports from people.
This might make sense then. You're at least aware that there's enlisted and then there's enlisted and then officers. And you don't need to be an enlisted person to go be an officer. You can have two people that are 22 years old and one go enlist as an officer and one go join as an officer, commission as an officer, and one join as enlisted. And it takes the same amount of time, energy, and effort to be a good officer as it does to be a good enlisted person. The difference is the skill sets. You're just taught different things. When you join to go be an officer, you're taught how to communicate. You're taught to have a higher level of standard. You're taught how to delegate. You're taught how to lead. You're taught about, punishment and all that kind of stuff only officers can punish. And as an enlisted person, you're kind of taught about chain of command. You're taught about culture and things like that. Things that you would need somebody at a lower tier to cultured in to be able to take orders from somebody above you, I guess. And you can do the same thing as an entrepreneur. Like you can go the enlisted route or you can go the officer route. So you can go spend all your time underwriting properties or knocking on doors. Those are things I would call the enlisted route. There are things that need to happen. You can't have a military without enlisted and officers, things that have to happen. But it takes just as much time, energy, and effort to go be a good underwriter as it does to be a good leader, a good officer, metaphorically speaking. Okay. So once I understood that, I was like, no. You don't have to go mop floors and work on planes and shoot rivets and all that kind of stuff to go then graduate and be an officer. Two different things. I
think that's a really good perspective to have. I'm kind of reminded of some of the structure in the LDS faith where they hand out callings, which are responsibilities in the church where you take on a specific it's like a scope of responsibility, right? And so the phrase that's often used there is to magnify your calling. So even though it might be something that maybe some people could look on from the outside as maybe being less than, we don't really look at it that way. It's more of everyone's responsibility in their scope is just as important as the next person's responsibility in their scope. And I think that can have a lot of synergy in entrepreneurship as well. It's important for a boss to act like a boss. It's important for an employee to act like an employee. It's important for a team to act like a team. And in order to make that happen, everyone has to show up 100%.
Yeah. Yep. Well said. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that analogy. I think you're right on the money.
Cool. I think the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was the mindset stuff of becoming an entrepreneur, because you were in the military and there's a lot of structure there. But I know that from my personal experience, being an entrepreneur, no one's telling you what to do. You can get mentors and you can get coaches, but ultimately, whether you decide to do something or not and which direction you go, still rests on you to decide. So where did that kind of shift come? Where the realization that you needed to be self-directed? And what were your feelings around that?
That's a good question. You know, when I think back to my 15 years of military service, there's one thing that stands out, a trait or a characteristic of mine that stands out that I don't see from most people. And I can't take credit for it. It came from 15 years of military service. 4 years ago, I went down to a mastermind in Phoenix. And one of the things that my mentor said at the time was, when you have a bottleneck in your business, the question isn't, how do I go solve this problem? The question is, who is already doing this and who knows how to solve it? Who do I need to bring into my business? And so a lot of you guys might, a lot of you guys watching right now might be familiar with this concept. There's a book about it from Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, and it's called Who, Not How. It's basically that concept. Like, when you have something in your business needs to get done, the question isn't how do I do it? It's who's already doing it? Who has the talent? Who has the skill sets? Who has the time to come in and do this? And then your part obviously is to explain to them why it's a good fit for them to come in and do it. But this whole who, not how, which at the time, and still to this day, it goes back to exactly what we're talking about right now. How many people do you know that have other skill sets and talents around other things, yet they're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing? They're knocking on doors, or they're underwriting properties, or they're scrolling through Facebook, whatever it is. Like, they're doing the same thing last year that they are doing this year. And they haven't elevated their skill set at all. I was told that 4 years ago. And Nathanael, that was the last time when I came home from that mastermind. That was the last time that I ever did something that was not the highest and best use of my time. Now, the reason why this is so pertinent to 15 years of military experience was because in the military, when you're told to go do something, you go do it. It's not your job to ask why. It's not your job to understand the bigger picture. It's not your job to question, or it's not your job. If somebody tells you to go do something, you just go do it blindly. And the only thing you respond with is yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. That's it. So there was a lot of things that I learned, just little things like that I just learned from other people that were ahead of me, that I didn't have to go mess around and find out. I didn't have to spend 6 months doing something a certain way for me to then be like, oh my gosh, I've been told this a million times. Now I get it. So little things like who, not how, little things like focus on one thing until you've made that one thing a 7-figure business, and then go diverse. Like little things like that, dude, where most people, they have to be told 10 million times. And then 6 months later, when they're like, oh, Jesse, I'm still not where I want to be. It's like, okay, well, what are you working on? Oh, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And then we got this property over here. And then I'm also going to be this. And then I'm doing this for active income. And it's like, okay, that's why. That's literally why. Nobody ever had to tell me but one time. And then that was it. And so I don't know, Nathanael, maybe because of my military experience, that's the only other thing I could think of. That's the only conclusion I could come to. When I watch a podcast and somebody says, this is what I did, I take that as somebody ahead of me giving me an order. Roger that. I'm literally stopping this right now.
I think I just have to be told one time. You mentioned earlier, Jesse. Maybe I'm wrong in this, but it seems to me like this ties directly back into what you talked about, where you treat every opportunity like your one chance to have everything you ever wanted.
Yeah, right? I do. Yes.
And so if you're treating every opportunity like that, when you receive advice and you latch onto it like that, I feel like that's why. Because if people are going to treat the advice they get as that's the one chance they have to change their life and get everything they ever wanted, then they're going to treat it differently.
That's it. That's literally it. You put it into words better than I did. That's literally it. So when people come to me now, people are running. I got friends that are running Zooms in other communities and things like that. And I live in Alaska, so I'm like 4 hours behind everybody else. So when people are like, hey, I've got a Zoom that I'm running at 6 a.m. Would you love to come jam with me? This happened not too long ago. And 6 a.m. it was Central Time. So 6 a.m. Central Time is 3 a.m. Alaska time, which means I've got to be up at 2:30 to get my hair and makeup on.
Yeah, depends on the mustache.
Yeah, exactly. But I treat that one Zoom where most people might think about it and they'd be like, oh man, I've got to get up at 2:30, which means I got to go to bed at this time. And then, man, is it going to throw my entire day? Like where most people would just start thinking and overthinking about all these things. I treat that one Zoom like it's my one opportunity. There might be one person in there that I may be able to help out far above and beyond, anybody else that's going to impact my life in this way or something. Like that's how I treat it, dude. Every little thing that I do is treated as if it's the one opportunity that's going to completely change my entire life.
I think that's an immensely valuable perspective to have, because even if you're wrong 99 times out of 100, being right that one time is that time that your life completely changes. Even if you're wrong 900 times, just the one time completely changes your life. So treating it like it's very serious is phenomenal, because you only get one life. So why aren't you playing full out with your one life?
Absolutely.
Well, I think that this has been an incredibly valuable conversation today, Jesse, especially for the audience and as well as myself. One last thing before we finish up, I just want to know, do you have any advice for yourself 5 years ago?
Man, it might be a culmination of a couple things. It might be that volume will solve 99% of my problems. 5 years ago, I would think too small, or the problems that I would try to solve would be, have you ever heard somebody be like, well, I want to go do this thing, or I want to go to this event, or I want to go do X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, but I'm waiting for this deal to close.
Yeah, I've heard
You ever
that.
heard anybody say that before? I've said that before.
Or I'm waiting for my bonus before we can go take this vacation, or I'm waiting for this before that.
And as an entrepreneur, I can't tell you how much better off I would have been had somebody kind of reset my standard of, you're trying to solve one problem. Again, this goes back to like the officer versus enlisted type of thinking, right? Like you don't need to, I don't believe that you need to go through a year or 2 or 3 years of going from one deal to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And your mantra consistently being, oh, I want to go do this thing, or I need to pay my mortgage, or whatever it is, but I need this one deal to go through. I really believe that right from the get-go, just like officers do, with the right culture, the right mentorship, the right line of thinking, you can go right into solving a problem of not just one deal, but it's like, how do I get, kind of like what we talk about in Growth Co. It's like, let's not focus on like one deal. Like right now, I want you to solve the problem. How do you go get a couple hundred deals a week sent to you? Like, let's focus on that problem. So I wish somebody would have set that standard to me. If I could go back and give myself some advice, it would be resetting that standard and always focusing on the biggest problem, prioritizing like the biggest domino. Like a lot of times as an entrepreneur, we focus on, you ever seen those dominoes where it starts really big and then they get smaller as they go down?
And the idea is that you can tip over the small one and it like causes a chain reaction until the big one falls over, right?
Yeah. Kind of.
That's typically how it works.
Kind of. I wasn't thinking of, you're not wrong, and I've seen that in that analogy, like once you get enough momentum going forward. But the analogy that I was thinking of, like, what is the biggest domino that I could knock over that makes everything else happen? And more often than not, it's not, from an entrepreneurship standpoint, it's not necessarily starting with the smallest. I think that's why you have a 1%, man, because you have 999 other people. To make 7 figures, it's not 1 out of 100 anymore. It's a 1 out of 1,000. And you got 999 other people that are all focused on the small domino. And 94% of small business owners never pass the 7-figure mark. So you get 6%. It is. It's a huge number, dude. And so it would be to help me focus, like take an officer perspective on it. Like, hey, what's the biggest domino that's going to metaphorically, stop this war or whatever it is, show force, whatever. Like, what's the biggest thing? If we get this thing right and we do so much volume with this thing, everything else that we want just comes to fruition. So that's probably the sort of conversation I'd probably go back and start having with myself and just start feeding my mind around, you got to think bigger, you got to solve bigger problems. You're wasting your time on all these little things. But for most people, it's all those little things that help give the perspective. It's kind of like works. Here's a famous mantra in the Air Force: work smarter, not harder. But you can't work smarter until you have first worked harder.
Yeah. Sometimes the smartest thing is to work hard.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if there's a one-size-fits-all answer to this, but that would probably, just me knowing how I work and how I think, that would probably be the the conversation I'd like to go back and have with myself.
I really like that. Trying to think about what this kind of implies with some of these other things. Would you think that, imagine environment's really big factor in that, and being able to change your perspective on thinking bigger, the kind of the rooms you're stepping into. I think it was one of these last events that you hosted that I talked about how the point of getting into these bigger rooms isn't so much about the opportunities themselves. It's about learning how to recognize what opportunity looks like. And so I think that ties into what we're talking about, being able to think bigger, because that's where the opportunities are, is in that shift in your ability to perceive what is an opportunity and being able to be resourceful about it.
Dude, that's it right there. And that goes, I think we were talking about this before we started recording, but every Friday, Amber and I will go find other people on social media who are doing things around AI. And we will go invite them to mastermind with us. And we keep it really small, like 4 to 7 people. And every Friday we have a Zoom meeting with these individuals, and we just cross-pollinate our audiences. If we go like Instagram Live with each other as an example, or, we share resources in that way. And so I know, and this kind of goes back to what I'm talking about. Like if I was able to connect with enough people doing the right things around like AI, like I could find opportunities to monetize in a major way. And then having people having people come in and just kind of fill in everything else that would need to happen for this big thing to happen. I know that if I got that thing right, that would be the domino where everything else that I wanted to happen would happen. So there's a really specific example of what I'm talking about. Like I could that's a much better way of learning how to become a resourceful entrepreneur by exactly what you got done talking about, finding those resources, finding those opportunities. That's why the room exists. And then everything else happens as a byproduct of that. So this is where, and you were talking about this at the beginning, that you go and be that person first. What does that 8-figure entrepreneur look like? How do they exist? What is their identity? Are they focused on $5 an hour opportunities, or with one key relationship, could that turn into $1,000 in 1 hour opportunity?
Yeah. And that's the other thing that is useful about getting into bigger rooms, is you get to start to see what those people look like, the lives they live, and the fact that, you know what, that person's just like me. There's no reason I can't do it too. And I think that that's a beautiful thing, to be able to start to realize that the world is both very big and very small. And we're all humans. We all have the exact same kinds of aspirations. There's a little bit of flavor difference, but they run along the same vein. And I think we all have this desire to have meaning in our lives and good relationships, and be able to have the ability to make choices and the freedom to do the things we want to do.
Well, I think that's exactly what you're doing with this podcast, Nathanael. You're bringing those people, you're bringing those resources, you're bringing those conversations. And the thing I really love about you is you're just as genuine and authentic in person as you are, virtually. People say that you shouldn't meet your heroes, but you're one of those people, dude, that's like, no, Nathanael's a real deal. Like he's exactly what you see on camera is exactly what you get in person, and it's real and it's authentic. And in an age where social media makes everybody looking like they're living their best life and they're not having any issues, and then now we've got AI involved and all this kind of stuff as well. I think it's people like you, Nathanael, that are going to shine through. You're genuine and you're authentic, and you lead and you speak with just heart and abundance and love and grace, and that's felt and received. And that's something that no amount of social media or AI can replicate.
I don't have to be the wizard behind the curtain.
I love that.
That's pretty good.
No,
I appreciate that.
I love and I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to the audience as well. I definitely appreciate all of you for all the time that you spend listening to me have these conversations, for tuning in and subscribing to my channel. If you haven't done that yet, I encourage you to do so. We'll see you again next time. This has been the Pot of Gold podcast. We talk about wealth generation, finances, real estate investing, and just the things that make us have the motivation that we have to go out and build a better world. Tune in next time. Talk to you again soon.